that.
Yeah.
I was like, it's some kind of propeller-based system. Something's making a little bit noise. There.
There we go.
All right,
Sure,
and
closed. I know the fan kicked on this morning when I booted up Destiny, and then it never really shut off. Destiny, Guild Wars, New World.
Just gonna use that fan.
It just 14 and WoW. It's like, let me know when you actually want to play a game, because right now it's just not. It doesn't try.
Yeah, we're not doing anything right now. Like you want to play 4 MMOs at the same time.
At the moment you boot up Guild Wars, Destiny, or New World, it's like whoa. Are we actually gaming?
Wow. 14. Wow. Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Game says usually I'm on the left. I assume you're watching on YouTube, because I assume on your screen am I on the left?
You are now. Whoa. All right. Like a deck of cards. It all really just sometimes depends. Like because sometimes they'll update like StreamYard or something, and it will mirror. So usually I try to have it face the way, like when I'm looking and talking to Chris, that at least it has the remote idea that I'm looking and talking to him on screen, as opposed to like, that's a fascinating idea, Chris. Really cool. And it's like, and so
you're
then
over here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Oh man, my hands are cold. I need the one task I need this week. I got a fan. I need to install it, because I know when probably not March, but like as we get back into the summer, it's like I need to have that fan going, because it can get hot in here with all the computers. All right, so I got y'all's chat up. I got our chat up. What's going on, Phil? How you doing? How is your day? What's up?
You're a little bit robot-y.
I'm robot-y?
Mm-hmm.
I'll see if YouTube also has that same aspect, because I'm like sounding clear over here. So I'll let them know. I'll see if Phil or Tom, who are over on the YouTube chat, should actually also share the thing. If you guys want your comments highlighted from the Twitch side, you can hang out on both. And then I'll pin this until I say take it away. Excellent. No robots on this side, so that's good. That's good. I'm freezing a little. That's weird. Like, you look crystal clear, and that's rocking and rolling. Tom says, "Hey everyone, excited for. I haven't played much of D2, but I've played so much D1. Excited to jump back in, guys. Let's get some. Welcome back, Tom. The whole point of this conversation, this topic, as Chris was telling me this morning that he ran Destiny. Chris is back. He skipped completely the Witch Queen. So I think our first topic, we might as well just jump into it. Destiny, should you play now, and why? And that could also apply to a why not. For me, Destiny is this, it's like a 3-month game for me. It usually is roughly about the 2 months prior to the expansion, a month into the expansion. And every time I hope that they hold on to me. Every time I'm just like, I wish that Destiny can continue to deliver these expansion-based experiences. And yet I kind of just burn myself out of the seasonal model. But Chris, I want to know, what ultimately is bringing you back into the fold? You have told me, for those who don't know, Chris and I, like, we've played this game, with the exception of Witch Queen, like every year. It's a game that we always kind of play. And it's one that you say, I don't know why I stopped playing. I log out with the intention to play tomorrow. And then all of a sudden you wake up and it's like, oh, there's how many expansions? I've missed 2 like coming back for Lightfall. What about Destiny is getting you to re-up this time?
I mean, so I booted up this morning and it had like 60,000 pop-ups. It makes you go through every news pop-up that you've missed for 2 years. And so all I could remember was the presentation for Diablo 2 before it released, where they said they were going to minimize the amount of time to shooting. That was one of their core development philosophies, was how do we shoot more? We just want to shoot more. And I was like, that sounds awesome. So I was like, I'm going to boot it up today, just make sure my controller's working. It should be plug and play, but I plugged my controller in. I installed the game on Friday. I meant to play over the weekend. I got busy doing other stuff. And so, because Witch Queen was free for everybody to play just for the weekend.
Yeah.
So I was like, great, I'll jump in, mess around a little. I didn't. And I booted up this morning and it was like 85 dialogues to like get my ship out to space to go into a planet.
To throw you into a mission. That's the
Yeah.
best part. Like when it's like, oh man, I haven't played in a while, and then you're like, I'm now fighting something. Like,
Yeah,
wait,
you got
what
to take this
happened?
really seriously. They're talking to you. You got to be invested. You can't just get your feet wet. You have to go straight into story with no prior awareness. Which, if that's what you want, if you sat down and you're like, I'm booting up Destiny for the first time, I want my cinematic experience, but I just wanted to verify the shooting worked for tomorrow. Like that's it. I just wanted to verify. I just wanted to like just shoot something and log out. And that was a journey. So I'm reminded of like what friction pushes me out each time.
Mhm.
And it's that there's just all these needless why moments, like all these little, like the UI is just a little goofy, and the something about collecting the items is just a little goofy. And like I remember just all these little friction moments, and no one on its own is worth making a big deal about. It's not. You are absolutely sitting down at somebody else's house for dinner and they put the fork on the wrong side of the plate and then you just freak out. But it's that there's 200 of these little things. And so that starts to get really cumbersome. So like I'm reminded of that. But what got me to come back is that my understanding is, yes, while my client is trying to remind me of all the stuff I've missed, is that this time around, that seems to be one of their big core focuses. It sounds like one of their big core focuses is that, yes, they want to release an expansion. They want to release content because that's what the people who are perfectly happy with the game are here to play.
Yeah.
But for all the people that they'd like to come back, all the people they'd like to try the game out for the first time, and all the veterans who they're like, yeah, I'm playing, but that doesn't mean I'm happy about everything. They want to go through and just improve all those little friction points. Because the core gameplay that's underneath is really amazing. But you just have to dig through all these little like thorny branches to get there. But it's awesome. And so if they could just kind of prune back some of the thorns, maybe that's what keeps me in longer this time.
There's so many different elements that I'm personally excited for with Destiny. Now, I'm not going to talk spoilers because there is I think a really fascinating story. I've been playing since the Destiny 1 beta, and I've had this hardcore Destiny play style, and then at the same time this very casual or just checking in on it occasionally play style. Like having done all the raids in Destiny 1, I don't think I actually did the King's Fall raid. I think there was one raid that at the end of Destiny 1 that I was like, I don't know why I'm here. And then ultimately having come into Destiny 2 and done most of the raids and the content, but I ended up just kind of living in Destiny 2 for a PvP perspective. And it wasn't until they started doing their sunsetting, their vaulting of content, that I was like, well, I'm going to go do the PvE stuff. And I did that kind of as a self-defense mechanism because we lost everything from D1 to D2. I wasn't necessarily happy with the D2 experience originally, but then Bungie went to work. They showed up. They had the core gunplay, and then it was just a matter of the things that were around it. And then going into, I can say, the Witch Queen itself, I feel like the Witch Queen is by far the best showcasing of Bungie and their expansion and their campaign. Because one of the things I even got frustrated with, Beyond Light, was at some point I'm like, wait, where's the campaign go? What am I supposed to do? I need to go do this now. And then it turns out I didn't need to do that at all. And it was actually this thing over here and I completely missed it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll go do that. It kind of had all these I'm fine with secrets, but it just felt like there was this great pacing and all of a sudden you kind of had to stop. But then Witch Queen solved that. The Witch Queen's campaign structure was just so good. It felt like I had this really cohesive experience, and it made me excited to jump into the other systems of the game. But the seasonal model has been something that I've continued to talk about and vent my frustration at, because I've often found myself wanting to play Destiny about 2 to 3 weeks before the new season, and then going, well, that progress is just getting completely reset. I guess I'll wait 3 weeks and start. And then I kind of miss out on that momentum and that hype that I was excited about originally. And so the model that they had was disincentivized. But while they haven't updated the season or annual pass or whatever they're calling it, they have added this thing called Guardian Rank. So I'm very curious to see if my overall Guardian Rank system is my motivator to be playing whenever I want to play, whether it's 3 weeks before the seasonal pass or whatever. Is that going to be the core like character grind, that investment? Because I love Destiny's horizontal progression because it sticks with me. Every year at the expansion, the vertical progression all gets reset. So I don't stress about that. I know that's the relationship I have with the game, but it's horizontal, chasing the various different exotics, getting their catalysts, doing those different quests and so on, that I find a lot of joy in because I carry that forward, that investment. Whether I like end up liking the gun or not, like it's always fun to kind of look into my vault and be like, oh yeah, I have that. Oh, I have that. Oh, I've got that. Oh, I remember doing that quest. That was wild. That was crazy. So it ends up like instilling these really good memories that even if I'm not actively using the gun, and then as metas change, that kind of says, oh, wow, I already got that. Let me go and kind of play around with that. Oh, I'm missing that piece. How do I go find it? And they've built some of that. Like they've really kind of refined their collections and some of the systems that I think really do highlight some of the things you can chase, which is kind of nice. But it's going to be something where it's like, I'm so thrilled because this is kind of, I've been playing Season of the Seraph. I really enjoyed what they offered. I really enjoyed what they brought to the table. And I'm really looking forward to Lightfall as it then sets up the final shape. But then now we're back into this mystery. Will we get a Destiny 3? Is now the time to start or return to the game itself? And so that's essentially kind of where I hope that this ultimately, we here in a couple of weeks, we can sit down and say, oh, wow, like this is different, because the quality of life and the loadouts and everything they're bringing, it just is something that I've been wanting in this game for a very, very long time. And I really do feel heard as a Destiny player right now.
You're still pretty robot-y, by the way. You're like totally frozen right now.
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, but the audio is in and out of robot.
Do you want to check it on your end? Because you sound perfectly clear. No complaints from the YouTube side of things. We'll see if Chris is having an issue on his end. All right, what's up, chat? It's just me and you guys. We're gonna have some fun. Let's see here. Let's see. Linus says, and did not like very confused. Wanted to start from the beginning with zero power because not much like his understand. Yeah, the power game isn't what you're looking for in this game. It is literally just something that is in a way kind of to kind of gate some of the content. So I've seen a lot of people wishing they could start at level 1, but then it doesn't work. Like they can't. So that is going to be how it is in that regards. There's a nice Steam sale on D2 for everyone, just FYI. Yeah, I would recommend if you can get the game on sale. The Legendary Edition, I put out a buyer's guide on Destiny 2. The Legendary Edition, just as a heads up, usually has the collection. Usually they add the current expansion, Witch Queen, to it. So ultimately you have to buy the newest expansion and then usually the Legacy if you're trying to get caught back up. Strife says, I also think that there are lore and potential for a variety of enemies that they seem to stick with some of the 3 factions and 3 taken versions of it. 3 got to get samey. I think there is a lot of lore potential. I'm hoping that we get to see stuff with the Vex a little bit more. I feel like at least from what I've played, I feel like we've obviously dived more into Hive and Fallen. Interestingly enough, obviously they have the various different other factions, same thing. And then I think it's not the Taken, it's the it's the one that they introduced for the Forspoken. Why the Strive, the somethings, the Scorn. There we go. I absolutely hate that faction. Is that any better at all?
It seems a little better. Right. I don't know.
Weird. It's like you come in pretty clear and the stream's showing up pretty good too. So
I don't know if your Outbound is just weak.
No, I mean it's the weakest thing I have because we're on cable. We're not on.
Because if it's clean on your side, then it's not clean on mine. Then I'm just not getting enough output from you. But upload is something that the United States is bad with. Okay. Yeah. So the speculation towards a D3.
Yeah.
Is that healthy? Like,
I don't know. Like it could be.
It does start to feel like if they're just going to delete all this, that's against the core value proposition of an MMORPG.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know how I ever truly care about Destiny again the same way if they do it again. Like I was still really hurt about the D1 to D2 change because Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2 are fundamentally different games. They're different in so many ways. Guild Wars 1 was not even marketed as an MMORPG. That's us that put the label on there. And then we put that label on there. And then people talk about like what it did well or didn't do well as an MMO. And they were like, we didn't call it an MMO. That's you. It was a lobby-based game. And so, but Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, for how much we lost, it did not feel different enough to me. And so I was upset for a long time about that change. And so as I look at kind of bringing this in, and I'm playing this and people start talk about a Destiny 3, I don't understand how that wouldn't hurt them. Like, what do we gain? What do we get if we get a Destiny 3 versus if they just kind of do what World of Warcraft and what Final Fantasy and what Guild Wars are doing, and they say new story, same game.
At some point, it would have to have that technical leap that cannot just be done in the current engine, and it has to have that value proposition. Destiny 2, I felt like they offered that value proposition, but then when you started playing it, the biggest kickback, why you saw so many people frustrated with it in its earlier inception, up until like Forsaken really Forsaken really started to change the narrative. People really liked that campaign. It had an emotional context. It had really big payoffs for like players. A lot of that in my mind. And then ultimately that ended up, being sunset. So it's like if they're able to sit down and say, like, from a technical perspective, this is something we cannot do within this current engine and design. Here we go. But they have cross-play, cross-save. They have drop-in, drop-out multiplayer. They have all these things. So like that value proposition for D3 has to be something that really drives the players to want that rather than, just keep continuing it on in the current engine and just calling it Destiny, 2 for that sake. But time will tell. I'm not necessarily too worried about that right now because Destiny for me, like, is my yearly donation to Bungie.net. Like they no matter what, like even if they come out and say, after Final Shape, that's the final thing for Destiny 2, we're gonna do Destiny 3, I'm still buying the Final Shape. I'm still pot committed to that, and so I'm not too personally worried. But it will be something that gets evaluated. Like, was this worth the effort and the pain? And the shifting of that, because I still wish that Destiny 1 was just that. Like there was no 2, it just continued to evolve from it. But at its core, they when we look back at it now, there was a lot of things they have added that I don't think they could have originally added back in Destiny 1, if they wanted to. But we'll have to ultimately wait and see.
Without a pretty significant overhaul. I mean, we've watched WoW and 14 change a lot. 14 did go through a pretty big overhaul from one to 2, but from 2 on, it has still grown to do things that the devs have said were impossible. WoW has grown to do things that the devs said were impossible. There is a region-wide auction house, and you can jump server to server by simply jumping parties. Somebody in stream the other day said, like, well, 14 has a world visit system, and WoW doesn't have that. That's because it doesn't need one. You just party, and it just jumps you servers seamlessly. No load screen, no nothing. You're just in with somebody else that's in a totally different server instantly, and that's incredible. And that was not possible when the game launched. So I think the other thing is that sometimes we hear devs come out and say, what we want to do is not possible, and then you see somebody else doing it, and without a really good developer evangelist, which is a real job, to kind of communicate on behalf of that dev team, it's really hard to explain to a layman, somebody who's not in the dev space, of why your game is saying something is impossible, but this other game used to say it's impossible, and then
it did it.
And so it's like, well, if they can make the impossible happen, why can't you?
Ooh, that's something that's, as a developer, I wish that I could just like take people into the environment in the system and realize that not everything is so A to B comparison. From the gamer's perspective, from the player's perspective, we're talking apples and apples, right? But then the devs, like, there's so many other like things and challenges and design choices that were maybe made by other people who are no longer in the company that could end up like causing that kind of level of delay or struggle. And so that's just where it's like, oh man, like I know that people like that are comparing apples to apples, but from like it really is an apple to pretzel kind of perspective. Like it's, like sometimes that happens. And then if the game's getting the support and the players want it, like the devs, they want to make that, they want to bring that into the game. But that's why the answer is always difficult, because this comes down to things that are said online, taken out of context. You and I have dealt with this in terms of Final Fantasy many times, right? Like Zeppelin was talking about, like Animal Crossing, like it's not Animal Crossing, it's like, oh, and then you see it gets picked up, that becomes the general thought process and people say it. So you also have to be careful about saying whether or not something is or isn't coming, or saying, hey, we'll look into it. And then people saying, oh, they're going to do this, that this is absolutely going to happen. And then it turns out like, oh, it might take us 5 years or 10 years, just because there's so many things that, when you get into dev, like, oh, we introduced that feature and it broke the game and was unplayable. We have to figure out why and dive into that. And that takes time, money, resources. And sometimes that's something where like it would be nice to have, but it's all like you got to think about it in terms of cost. Now, Paul asked this. He asked this question, and this will be interesting for Chris as well. He says, have they made improvements to the class system so they feel more distinct, or does it still is it still more of a gear focused game? Now, you last played Beyond Light, correct? That was the last. So you got to see Stasis in terms of the first Darkness subclass and how the like aspects and affixes play. Okay, good. They have done that to all the subclasses, all the original Void, Arc, Solar. So you have way more build control, and you've got all the grenades now. One of the things that I always kind of felt frustrated by is like some classes had certain grenades, and like in a way, I actually feel it's way more distinct in terms of your choice as what kind of build that you want to make. And in terms of their abilities, I feel like they do feel way more distinct. And all that work was done over the course of the year of the Witch Queen. So going into Witch Queen, they're introducing Strand, a new Darkness subclass. And I think that ultimately is going to pair well to having classes that really do feel more unique. But also, builds and different things are just going to get even more interesting this year forward. And that's my personal take. But if you have any questions, Chris, on that, or if I could help answer that a different way, Paul, let me know.
So, I mean, I think we're getting build slots now. And so that, like, even if you end up only wanting to play mostly the one way in PvP and mostly the one way in PvE, and so you kind of have these two ways of thinking, it's still nice to have a third build slot, because if for no other reason, it lets you experiment. It lets you, what doesn't feel good is that I have to unsave my build in a game to progress in a different direction, only to realize I want to go back. Right. And so like build slots, if nothing else, give you a place to test. Brian's going to hop on in an hour and we're going to do some content together. And I know I'm going to want to play on the class that I'm really reliable on. But I'd like to mess around with some other stuff, and like build slots right from the get-go already do that.
Yeah.
Within the different kind of gear progressions within the game, it does feel like there's a little bit of a dialogue there, where when I last left the game, it still felt like, okay, but the exotics still have a pretty drastic change on your moment-to-moment gameplay. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It just feels like some of your talent trees are chosen in the menu, and some of your talent trees are chosen by the gear itself. Where that became frustrating is in PvP, because people had just such a huge advantage over you. But where that became really fun was in the PvE side, where it was wildly exploratory, where you could find something and go, oh, what's that? How does that work? And so like that kind of piece of candy moment where things are just dropping off the ground, I found that really rewarding. So I think that's like having the base builds feel good is really important to me for PvP. For PvE, like I think the gear progression is such a key component. Like that's why we're killing stuff. We're killing stuff for loot. And so the loot feeling really powerful feels really good to me. Where I do struggle from there is how do builds carry over from, like, I've been away for a while. So when I come back in, what am I going to need to do to build my character back up to having access to any skills? And what am I going to need to do to all of my gear? Is all of my gear just trash?
So no, your gear is all going to be at the low end cap of the starter. So everybody's going to be at the same power level. Your gear that you have is the gear you have. You will also have access to a couple of slots, but you might not have as many slots as I do. And then overall, with your Guardian ranks and playing the game, you can unlock up to 10 different build slots and label them like PvE centric or PvE or like etc. Like you have a lot. And this is going to tie really strongly into raids. This is going to tie strongly into how I play the game. Because just like you, like, yes, the builds all feel way more interesting. I end up just kind of finding a build that I like and that I can do well in PvE and PvP and just kind of sit on it, because going through and trying to change the different weapons ends up being a little bit more of a hassle. And especially with some of my weapon based goals where I've been just working on unlocking catalysts, I'm like, I'm just going to sit on this weapon anyway, even if it's not best or meta. I'm working on this weapon for this reason. But to be able to sit here and say, cool, I'm doing that. Oh, now I'm going to go jump into PvP, or we're going to go do a dungeon, or we're going to do whatever. Let me just load that up so that I can bring the best version of myself to that content. And that's going to give me more ways to experiment with the existing offering of classes where, yeah, I don't want to equip this. Okay, how do I make my armor really efficient with the guns that are a part that's going to really complement this build? I think that's going to open it up to a lot more variety. And it's going to be, I think, a lot more fun for a lot of players, because even if you don't go above and beyond and have all your 10 loadout slots for all the different subclasses, like if you got like 3, you're like, this is something I really enjoy for doing the like Vanguard. This is something I enjoy for PvP. This is something I enjoy for that. Cool, man. And it just makes it easy, snappy to be able to swap between them. And that's exactly what I think is going to be a huge booster for a lot of players. I honestly think that's going to be something where, because people would say, hey, they have the API, you can go do that via an app. I'm like, that's a whole other extra step, man. Like, it's like, I'm not that upset that I'm just playing the game in a way that I find fun. I'm not going to go download an app and make this extra effort, and that's just me.
So how does it work if you want to play more than one of the classes? I've spent in my time away, I've spent a lot more time in other MMOs, and what I've been moving towards is I've typically been a one character player, but now I have every classic cap in Final Fantasy, and I'm starting to approach that in World of Warcraft, and I'm preparing to work towards that in Guild Wars. New World encourages the crap out of me using their different system, but it's all on one character. How do I? It feels like I'm coming back on my Hunter. What happens to my Warlock and Titan when I'm caught up?
I'd also defer like anybody in chat if they know, because my head knowledge says that you still have to go and progress the story on the different characters. Okay. It's not like there's now like your gear you can transfer between, you have your vault, like there's a lot of that happens. But for me, I always kind of also found that to be a little bit extra, and only kind of did that for a handful of weapons that I really, really cared about. But at its core, I ended up just kind of sticking with Warlock. That's what I've done in the past. I've done Warlock and Titan, and I never got around to really kind of playing as a Hunter. And so I'm very curious to see that. So I know that's been a part of the conversation. I know people within the community have asked that there be some level of like crossover, like especially you do these bigger quests, a lot of work has to go into that. Could you just have that same level? And so if anybody in chat knows if they've made that change, I have not seen that written. So it ends up probably being that if you really want to get sweaty, you still got to go grind it out.
Okay. And then
chat's confirmed that.
Within the vaulting was a really controversial thing that's happened over the course. What is the state of, okay, so you come back. Mm-hmm. Let's assume the expansion tomorrow is nothing but incredible. Right. I'm excited for it. I think a lot of people are excited for it. It's nothing but incredible, but it is finite. And so you get to the point where you're like, all right, I've kind of done everything I want to do this week. I'm waiting for next week. You've missed some expansions. Maybe not everybody's around every single year.
Right.
What's the process to go back and either pick those up? What's the process of getting into anything that you maybe bought the expansion, but you didn't end up kind of playing it as much as you thought you would?
The good news is they've stopped the storied and the expansion vaulting. So there are some of the Forsaken stuff that's there. The Moon's Haunted, Shadowkeep is still there. Like, so that's where in the past Shadowkeep would have been moved out with Lightfall. That's sticking around. So if you own that, you still have that. They haven't gotten rid of it. And everything they say going forward is also going to stick into the core package of what we're playing. If it was anything from the Red War, Destiny 2, like year 1 and 2 and 3, year 1 and 2, something like they were on that, you won't well, you can't have real access to that. But they are bringing more of the things like the legendary quests and vaulting as part of like a exotic quest rotator, and they're starting to kind of like trying to bring some of that in as a part of like various different weekly rotators and more over the course of this year. So for me, I would say like you coming back, like you still probably have things within Beyond Light to do. You definitely have Witch Queen stuff to do. Some of the stuff that they've added in is getting like vaulted. I think some of the seasonal activities that were in the previous thing, those are getting kind of vaulted, but that was
They
more
come
of just
back. Like when they say the word
Yeah.
vaulted, I think
Yeah.
of Disney Vault where it comes back. But
Yeah.
like Final Fantasy added the Unreal system and implied that it would be vaulted,
Mhm.
and we have yet to see one come through a second time. And
Yeah.
so like just as like a question of the word vaulting, what does that mean?
So what it means right now is deleted. the
Okay.
like vaulting, like the term means that it has the intention of coming back, and
It
does.
goes into Fallout and it never comes back.
Yeah. But they have brought back like the Leviathan in a unique and different way. That was a part of that happened this last year, which was really interesting. So they're finding ways to bring things back, but not essentially how they like were. There's a change. There's a time element that is applied, and things have happened to that. But at its core, like I really hope that we get to see them bring back Forsaken. I really would love to see people be able to go and experience the Red War. And if it ultimately ends up being as a part of a weekly quest rotator that's like, hey,
Sure.
this week go experience the Red War, and then next week we're going to do this, and then next week we're that, and that just rotates
That's
in.
what WoW does.
I think that it would end up ultimately being probably the best trade-off that we have available.
I was in
when
a
it comes to that.
sequential rotator on time
Yeah.
walking. Time walking is not always available, so time walking is already come and go. And when it's available, time walking is in order. And so you would have expansion 1, and the next time time walking is available, it'll be expansion 2. And it's every X number of weeks, and it's just on rotate. And so if
Yeah.
Destiny said, hey, every first weekend of the month, we're going to bring back something old, and we're going to bring them back in order. And so it becomes this very like, if you want to play through them, set aside the next 6 weekends and you can experience this content. Or if you just missed one thing, you're like, okay, let me mark that down on my calendar. I'm definitely going to game 3 weekends from now, because that's content that I really missed or I'd really love to experience again. So that's what I picture the word vaulting mean. But what I found is vaulting means something drastically different from game to game. And a lot of games, vaulting means they're putting it in the safe, never to be accessed again. And so it's the exact same as deleting it as far as the everyday player.
The question will be is like, what's that time frame, work out to? And that's something where like as a player, like there's things that Bungie does that like I do get frustrated at. But as also a player, like the gunplay and the gameplay is just so good. Like it's like honestly, it really is like I wish that if the game wasn't as good as the game is, there would be no way in hell that they would be able to pull off the things that they've done and still be a game that every year people are excited about playing. And every year there'll be people going and making comments like, this game is the worst. I hate it. I got over 20,000 hours in this game and I hope it dies. And it's like, and then you'll see that person in, 6 months going, hey, what's all changed? I'm thinking about coming back. It's like,
it's got the core moment to moment gameplay is best in class. The best you can hope for is to have a game that is half as good at the combat system as Destiny. Like that would be, if every game that released for the rest of time was half as good in the moment to moment gameplay as how Destiny feels, we would be in a golden era of games. It's all the other stuff that, that can frustrate people a little bit. I get that. I do. Yeah. So I think that's everything that I want to know. I'm excited. The servers are
Tomorrow's
already offline.
Gonna be fun, dude. Tomorrow is gonna be fun.
I love Expansion Day. Expansion Day is wildly fun in any game. I assume step 1 is to do the story. And
here's my hope. If you can do this, like if you're gonna stream it tomorrow on stream.
Yep.
Obviously when it goes live, there might be a bit of a queue, but team up with this community, play it on Legendary. Okay. Because I think even still, like you'll be boosted, but the nice thing is Legendary will actually feed you a lot of power, it's going to give you like a good challenge. Like it's going to feel like I did that last time. A lot of fun. It's also fun playing with people. If you get frustrated or if you just hit a wall and it's just not working, you can always step it down. Like it's not going to have you start all over at normal. So it's like you can even then tune it back up. So it does give you that. I would highly, highly, highly encourage you play on Legendary, like, and let people, whoever like is hanging out with you tomorrow, jump in and join you. And I think you guys are going to have like an absolute blast. I cannot wait to watch that. And yet at the same time, experience it for myself. It should be fun. It should be a lot of fun. And yeah. So that's what I think when I did the Witch Queen, that's what I did. And that's what I'm doing again. Even if I'm doing it solo, I think the Legendary campaign is absolutely the thing you want to touch.
Okay. Cool.
Anyway. All right. Thank you guys so much for the 5 likes on our Destiny conversation. At this point, we're going to shift to our second topic for today. As we also break these things up in video form. We hope you guys have been enjoying lots of the discussions, lots of things to talk about going on. Last week was nuts. To catch everybody up to speed. New World announced an expansion coming this fall. They announced a seasonal model, and we've been testing out the season pass. I posted my feedback over in Ginger World and on the official forums. There's things I like. There's things that they need to change. But when it comes down to it, this specific topic, we're going to be talking about what we expect for like a New World expansion. This is the first of their series. It's going to be at the 2-year marker ish for this game. And Chris and I are both playing it. And we know the first of the major updates for this year start rolling out March 28th. And that's going to lead us into season 2. Season 3 is where the expansion is set to drop. Chris, you've already kind of covered what they've showcased. We know mounts are coming and more. What do you expect for a New World expansion?
So their patches have been pretty large for a new game. Many times new games have to gear a ton of their effort at going backward and just hot fixing all the things that went wrong, all the things that turned out to be bad design philosophies. You had a perfectly good guess, didn't work out. Well-intentioned, but it just didn't work out. And so you spend a lot of that kind of first year where patches are typically rapid fire. You see some new MMOs, they'll have patches every 5 to 10 days. And then, something like Final Fantasy will have a patch every 2 months.
Yeah.
And a fan of the newer game will go, well, we have 5 times as many patches. It's like, yeah, but half your patches are just like making the servers function.
But like 14 in the first year, like it was like the patches were just like massive. It's like boom, boom. They hit hard. They came out hard, which is great.
And then it's also when you start setting the trend for what does it look like when you add a new class? What does a new weapon thing look like? What does a change to the zone look like? They've already gone back and redone their story, which is an incredible investment that WoW 14 and Guild Wars, each in their own way, have gone back and started reevaluating their new player experience after year 10. And so to be doing that less than 2 years in is an incredible sign of investment. I think that's a good thing for you to say, hey, there's some things we wish we changed. We wish we'd done voice acting. We wish we'd presented a little more clearly. And to do that, of course, in a perfect world, everything's just right the first time, but that's not reality. So I think there's been a lot in the first 2 years that have shown just how big a patch can be. Brimstone Sands is an enormous zone, and that is a patch. So when your question is like, what's an expansion?
Right.
Something bigger than that.
It has got to be bigger than that.
Substantially bigger, because
and bigger than and bigger than the seasonal model, because if the expansion is just, hey, this is season 3 and guess what, it costs $20 or $40, I like whatever, because it's gonna, an expansion implies that there's gonna be a cost. Like, yeah, it's got to have some weight to it, it's got to have some meat to it, and enough so because it does have season 3 separate, that you don't have to buy the expansion to participate in everything that is going to be changing with it.
Yeah, I mean, they could bundle it, right? So they could have maybe like a $30 expansion cost and $50 it comes with the, whatever.
Destiny does that. Like I buy the Destiny bundle because it comes with all the seasonal content. Sure. That way I'm like, just don't ask me for money again. I'll pay you once a year.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And so I get that. So first of all, I would expect it to feel like drastically different zones. It sounds like their intention is to revisit old zones instead of make the world larger.
Yeah, that's a concern, especially with mounts. Anyway,
and so there is a real question there of like, if you pick new zones, the advantage is they're all new, they're fun, exciting, and it funnels players there. The downside is that those players are now no longer in the old zones. And so as somebody that, I'm literally running around in Final Fantasy in the background right now, I'm in an Realm Reborn zone. The odds of me seeing a single living soul is slim to none. Like, it just doesn't happen. There are a handful of types of content like hunts that encourage people to go back in big groups, but the vast majority of these zones are not nearly as alive now as they were then. There are exceptions to that, like when they add a new server, you funneled all the new players, and so it mimics. But that's just like mimicking a time jump. It's taking us back to, because when this server was in a Realm Reborn, this was a much more lively zone. So if you could just force it to be all Realm Reborn players, then it takes care of it till those players progress, and then you're right back in the same problem. So I have questions about, like, is it the same zones? Is it new zones? The bigger concern is what happens to gear? Because I expect there to be a drastic overhaul. People want a whole new set of gear. It doesn't feel like an expansion if I'm basically told, oh, so I just pretty much wear the same weapons and the same armor. Like, at some point,
it can, but this is all applied that if you can do like an investment into that piece of gear where you're like, okay, cool, I have this gear that I worked hard for. It didn't come easy, and if they just then say go get something else new, then that's going to feel just as bad. So there's no perfect solution to that. Like, you gotta have to balance, right? Either you make it easy to get, or you make it able to step up over time.
So I don't know how clear they've been outside of what I've read from their press releases. I don't know if there's anything else that you can kind of elaborate on, but I can't tell if either they're going to just increase the infusions, so we're just going to go from 625 to 650 or something like that.
Right.
At which point this is just a vertical progression game, and then it falls in line with Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft, where every 2 years there's just an additional set of infusions. And what that means is that if there's ever gear that drops at 615, that gets less and less valuable, as now there's gear that drops that's tradable at 630 or whatever. And so vertical progression games, there's a lot of advantage to that. It makes it very clear what I need to work on when I hop into the game. It makes it very clear where I need to be. The downside is that also means that, like, at some point, all of your progress will be overwritten. And you just need to be okay with that. So I like vertical progression games. My two primary MMOs are vertical progression games. And the reason Guild Wars doesn't slide into a primary position is probably in part due to the fact that horizontal games feel like there's no urgency. Like, I've got all the time in the world because everything I do is worth it forever. So there's no FOMO there.
I think it's about establishing a blend, though, in that regards, because they have, what they've said is, to your point, yes, the vertical progression of gear score is going up, but they did not mention a level cap increase, which essentially then does two things. It adds 2 levels of verticality, as opposed to, like, just get to level 60 and then you have this other progression system and the collection of varying different builds, etc. But go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, it still means that, like, if right now 590 is the highest that's tradable because 600 is the soft cap before you infuse to 625, then if the new cap is 650, are they going to let gear drop at 620? And now, like, 590s already aren't worth that much because most people don't need them. And now that means that you're going to be able to get to 620 for that same very little gold. So, like, it's still vertical progression. It's still the same thing. The other problem is what do you do with mounts? They've designed a game that feels very feasible without a mount. What happens when you add mounts? Do you restrict those mounts to specific zones? Do you restrict those mounts to roads? Do you make those mounts cost a currency? Or are they just like, WoW and 14, where it's just a modified run speed at unlimited cost? And once you introduce it, there's no going back. Guild Wars is kind of the go-to example of what people want to see from mounts. But a lot of what makes Guild Wars mounts work that way is that the world is designed with them in mind. It's not just about taking Guild Wars mounts and just dropping them into Final Fantasy. That doesn't quite work.
The new world, I think, would benefit greatly from Guild Wars 2 kind of mount style system. There's a lot of verticality, a lot of scalability, especially when it comes to gliders. Like when they said mounts, I'm like, I really hope that includes the concept of a glider. I'd love to be able to jump off a cliff and be able to glide into some area that maybe I wasn't able to reach before. I think that could be something very thrilling. And so that hopes that mounts actually add to the experience as opposed to take it away. Because if all it is this makes me go fast, then like, okay, well, we already have that with roads, and what is this really giving me as a player outside of another collection mechanic that, that works? People like collecting mounts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if, what is the system? Now, here's the cool thing, maybe. I'm excited for it. I'd be kind of curious to your perspective, because on the PTR, a little bit of a bug showcase that mounts are a progression system. They have, just like with music, it's under the casual category. We can't see what perks get unlocked from it, but riding is actually going to be something that, just like within the music and things like that, you could choose to level up, which for me, I find thrilling. I always liked, like, yeah, let me level this up. Let me give me another bar to grind on. This is an RPG. I love that aspect, but I know not everybody does. People were like, I don't want to grind on mounts. What do you think, Chris?
Depends on how it works. If it's like movement and acrobatics in like Elder Scrolls games, then you are just running around jumping like a ridiculous guy until you've capped it. And then you put some potion on it. Now you can jump 3-story buildings. So like like if it can be modified in some way. And like the first time I did that, I had a spell that increased my total mana. And then I had a spell that like used all of that new mana on my acrobatics. And then I already had max acrobatics. And then I told you, I was out in the middle of nowhere. I was like, look at how high I can jump. Your brother's like, that's not that high. So then I went to town and I jumped from just standing still. I jumped on top of the roof of a 3-story building. And he's like, dude, what the hell? And I was like, I told you I can jump really high now. And the problem is that if my spell wore off and I jumped down from there, like I could die to the jump, because the jump was so high that if my acrobatics fell off, when I hit the ground, I didn't have the acrobatics to stick the landing. And so like, there's a lot of fun in that. In Guild Wars, they have a mount progression system within the PvP zone.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it makes it really fun to invest in long-term. It makes it really not fun to be new at PvP, because everybody else has a mount and you don't. And so I do have a question of like, being a game that has a heavy PvP component, what is their plan for that progression system within PvP?
We're going to have, and we don't have answers for that, but that's a really good question that only time will tell. Now, chat's talking about, like, would we possibly see a console release? The team that is working on the loadouts, which by far are the loadouts that they introduced on the PTR, just like we were talking about with Destiny, like, are amazing. It really changes the way that I can play, and a lot of people can play this game. There's obviously, like with any change, there's frustration and the debate, because the PTR has 2 with like a 3rd unlock on a part of the season pass. I feel like they should at least have 5. But the team working on the loadout system is also the team working on controller support, and that's already been confirmed by Scott, who's the game director. So we do know controller support is coming. It was not listed on the roadmap, because they only want to commit to the things they feel they can actually deliver on. But I would expect that, like, if this is the team delivering the loadouts and they really crush that out of the park, makes me excited to see. And I'd love to see controller support as added with the, not that you have to buy the expansion to have controller support, because that would be stupid, but have it where it's like, yep, it came out season 3 expansion, controller support for players who want that. Then ultimately, I would love to see the game come to console. I think that is essentially a part of the plan and roadmap. I don't know if that happens with the expansion itself, because that kind of feels like, honestly, for the team, a lot of irons in the fire if they're trying to also take the expansion and make it a console release. But if they could pull that off, like, that would be a lot of, there's a lot of players out there who say, let me know when it comes to PS5. Let me know when it comes to Xbox. And we know that Throne of Liberty, an Amazon published game, is coming to Xbox, coming to PC, coming to PlayStation. We know that Blue Protocol coming to Xbox, coming to PC, coming to PlayStation. So ultimately they're, building out. And originally, I think Lost Ark was talking about coming to consoles as well. So, like, I think Amazon just wants to be, have their games just everywhere. Like, yep, you can play it every which way you want. Controller support will make it so much more accessible for, Steam Deck. It'll make it so much more accessible. And even the Steam controller support that's there, it does the job. But native controller support is going to be, I think, really what sets kind of the difference for a lot of players and opens it up to console. So who knows? I'm not expecting expansion to be consoles, release as well. But I am hoping that we see controller support at least talked about more heavily this summer. With this, when it comes down to the couple things that you said, I would love to see as a part of an expansion, like how we have kind of starting areas. That one of the things that they need to give you is the ability to kind of pick your starting area, because when friends start and they start in 2 different areas of the game, it's frustrating. So they scaled back the amount of different starting areas that the game has, just to kind of try to eliminate that you got 4 friends and everybody's just so spread out over the map right at the start. You want to get together, you want to group up. I hope that they would actually be able to give you the ability to choose. And then as a part of this expansion, like when the new zones and stuff, they add a new starting area. It's not, in my mind, to your point, like I think if everything always just pushes further and further up and you have zones where you don't ever see anybody, there's no reason to be there. Like that's just wasted land mass. Like these are like, you could perfectly go into First Light. You can go into these zones and you can have some fun experiences still to this day that I really enjoy about its current offering. But yeah, if they do go and follow a pure verticality of like, okay, now you got to beat the MSQ, and you beat the MSQ, and now you can step into this new thing, and there's no reason to ever go into these old things, then it ends up just kind of feeling like you didn't really make the game bigger. You just kind of you kicked the can down the street. You just kind of shifted it a little bit. And that would be something that once we see the expansion, we'll have a better understanding of what the future for New World actually really entails in terms of their strategy and their plan overall. But with that, like new zones, new weapons. Now on the roadmap, it says 1 new weapon. I do feel the expansion is the time to release more than 1 new weapon, because you're going to drive everybody to that weapon just to try it out. And we've seen that already in Final Fantasy 14 multiple times. Just split it out, and also roll it out, as opposed to like all DPS or, like this is the tank expansion. Like that way you can end up having a mix of people who want to try different things, and have that, that experience. What kind of weapons?
Trying different things. How many loadouts are we getting on launch?
So it opens up with you right now on the PTR 2. No idea if that's going to be what it is at launch. And then there's apparently a 3rd that you can buy as many apparently as you want. So they're
going to give us some from the season pass, the unpaid season pass, right?
Yes.
So the unpaid season pass will get us more.
Yeah.
And then if we assume that every season allows you to do that, then I assume that you'd eventually be able to earn your way to there's got to be some cap.
I would assume there's some cap, but because it's, it is a data thing, like at some point, but I think I've seen a lot of people talk about that are the hardcore, like M10s and stuff, like with the different FXs and things like that they won at least like 12 or something like that, that they just to have.
I would love to see them tie it to the number of weapons that are out there. But then that already starts to make me go, okay, but now I have to give up one of the weapon types kind of in a way to start keeping a refining set, because the refining gear sets are real. Now you're still hard limited, because for you to have a set, you have to carry it. And so you're limited by weight.
Like, well, it's not the like loadouts actually take that weight right off you. Anything you store, anything you store in your loadout literally costs like it's out of your inventory. Your food, your potions, anything that you put in your loadout you're not carrying that. It's this magical little thing, and it's beautiful. You can name them. You just hit equip, and it like the only thing it doesn't do is adjust your stats.
I assumed it was going to work like WoW. So WoW, they sit in your inventory. They don't go into like an armory of sorts.
Right.
So I just assumed it was going to work like that. So it sounds like it's going to work almost identical to Guild Wars systems. They monetize theirs as well. And now Guild Wars are shareable. So you can
I think they're shareable here for your characters. I think
you can know like a hex code. So I can like save it off as a hex code in like a Google Doc, and it's there. Because the gathering sets and the crafting sets and stuff like that, because the crafting sets are only useful for that one crafting type. It's not one crafting set like Final Fantasy 14. It's individual crafting sets, and they don't live inside the menu like they do in WoW. Like they are individual crafting sets that take up a full set of gear. And so I have one, because that seems like plenty, because it's already just cumbersome to mess with. I would love to go get more, but when I look at my inventory, I'm like, I don't know. Then I have to go, maybe I store that gear in the storage where I keep that particular profession stuff, or like it just starts to be like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. That's what I've had to do to this point. And it's like, it's such a I talk about people like, oh, like I put my fishing gear on And I pretty much just kept like I would just fish. And if somebody was like, "Hey, can you help me out with this?" I would forget that I was in fishing gear. I would just go help them out. And I'm like, I'm not doing that much damage. Not a big deal. I'm going back to fishing. I don't want to have to deal with it. And if I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do expeditions, I'm gonna equip that set. I'm on healer, and literally probably for the next 3 weeks, I haven't fished. I haven't done it like, and the loadouts literally legitimately, even on the PTR, having played the PTR and went to live, I was like, oh, I already miss it. And I'm fine with purchasing it. I think if they actually said at a base level, like even if they said, go to your faction vendor and you have to do something in game to unlock additional, like, up to 5 sets. I think 5 feels a more fair entry point because people are still going to buy them. People are still going to buy them.
Buy the season pass. That's fine. Just give us one every season or 2 every season. So it's like every season you play, you get 1 for like the level 5 in the season pass and 1 for completing the season pass. So it's like, by 5 or 6 seasons go by, you're like, I don't necessarily worry about it as much anymore.
They are given premium currency in the season pass. So, which like from a financial perspective, if you start to look at the overall cost for the game, we don't know if they're going to do a yearly expansion, but let's just assume they're going to be on an every 2-year perspective. That roughly kind of puts the game at $60, assuming you don't use your currency that you've earned from the season pass on anything else. So roughly speaking, they're adding in a $60 a year subscription if you buy all the season passes. It's optional. You don't need to do it. I actually appreciate
it. So where like it'll be such a premium experience that if you're gonna play it all year long, it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I don't think it's bad. I think
hop in and try the game out with your friend. You can play for free, but as soon as you're gonna hang out, right? That's like saying, I go to a restaurant to eat the chips and salsa, and I just eat there every day, and I just eat the chips and salsa and get a glass of water. It's like, okay, but at some point, you're the jerk. So like, if you want to just come in and get a vibe for the place, absolutely, that's available. Optional subscriptions make that possible, and I think that's really great, as opposed to the full cover charge of getting into Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft once you have an established account. I just want to come back, get a vibe. But if you're going to stick around and you're going to be there every day, like,
most likely you're already spending. You're going to spend, I think though the thing I appreciate is that the free track is very rewarding. It's not like Destiny's free track where you can have a couple times where you just don't get anything. They're giving you something no matter what. So even if you're just kind of playing the game. And I think you said this as I was kind of watching your reaction and breakdown of it on your channel. I think it was that you were saying like, if you're having fun and there's no reason to pay for it day one, see how you do. If you finish it off and then you're like, hey, is it worth it to unlock 100 extra things for, the $20? Done. There you go. And then you get the premium and you're not sitting here going like, oh no, I guess I was going to play this game as much as I thought I was going to play this game. I still wish that they would do the Halo model though, in which that they just let you keep the battle pass.
So Call of Duty ties 10% extra experience to buying the pass. That encourages you to buy it earlier.
Right.
But otherwise, that like kind of retroactive thing, that's pretty typical in season passes now. The nice thing about it is it's very much like come in and just eat, and then we'll just charge you at the end. You just eat however much you eat, and then we'll just at the end, if you want to pay, you can pay.
If you want to. You're like, all right.
And it's if you want to. So like at the end, you can say like, okay, I would get all of the rewards if I bought the season pass. That sounds worth it to me. That's really nice, and that starts to mimic like a little more flexibility. That you would see from systems that don't feel as monetized. Which for a game that has not monetized to this point, I've had a very real question of like, they have to want to make money someday.
At some point,
they're gonna, like Amazon has run loss leaders as a company, but only on the path to making more money. Like it's always been in the long-term financial best interest of Amazon, even if in the short term it looks not worth it. And that can be years. Like they have a big war chest. But at some point, every part of Amazon is contributing to the whole of Amazon. And I expect New World to be no different. And so I've just wondered how charging $40 and then just continuing to make your players happy makes money. Like at some point you're going to want more money.
I think the vast majority of people who are active and really enjoy the game are excited about some of these changes. I think there are adjustments that they need to make. And I think that's where When the devs, like I was talking about this on Twitter, and then they reached out to me through DMs, like they're like, hey, you know, like what's the link on the forum thread that he posted? I was like, here you go. You know, like here's what I'm trying to talk about and communicate. And I feel heard. I don't, doesn't mean they're always going to say yes to like the idea that I have or the idea we have, but it's like, I really do feel like the devs hear, and they're trying to make sure they understand and they want to deliver the best product, because I think they know that delivering good products mean that people want to buy them. They want to support them. And I know that I've put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into New World. And just like with Destiny, I put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in these games. And yeah, they want to ask for money. Like, it's like, you know, it becomes a very easy answer of, sure, I know these things aren't free. Keep going, keep doing it.
Keep going.
But they're like, that being said, it's like there are a few things that I felt like they need to change about the seasonal model that leads into the expansion, is that everything you do should earn a seasonal experience. So like I went out and killed a monster, didn't get anything. I went and fished, didn't get anything. And I was like, you will change the way I play this game if I lose that as an option of fun. If I have to sit here and say, in order to progress the season, I don't mind doing the activities, but just give me one experience. Like, oh, you caught a fish or you killed him. It doesn't have to be significant. Just make sure that it's there. And then that way I don't ever feel like, oh man, I guess I chose to do this and I missed out on doing that, as opposed to like, oh, I chose to do this. And yeah, I wasn't efficient, but at least it was just reminding me like, yeah, making a little bit of progress. Thanks for killing that mob. Thanks for going and catching that fish. And who knows, we'll see if that was like, cause I think what I ended up hearing from the devs is that that's supposed to be how it works, maybe. And then they were going to go follow up with the team who built it to see if like, oh, was that a bug that was introduced? Because some of the kill trackers also aren't working. So again, PTR, right? This is where we go.
I mean, their achievement pane doesn't work in retail. So like in live. So WoW just introduced their season pass, kind of. And now because it's a subscription game, it's free and it's cosmetic only, and it takes place in game, and it can give you things like store mounts and stuff like that. And it's totally free if you're already paying. So it doesn't have to be a revenue source because it's already a subscription game.
14 has that now with the PvP.
What they've done is not everything grants progress, but the total amount of progress you can get in a season is like 1,000 points. And just about every way you could possibly dream of playing. So in New World terms, killing rabbits, running mutators, doing PvP, upgrading a town board, all of it. Every single thing has at least one, if not more than one mission tied to it. So you can't keep it in New World terms, you can't max your season pass off killing rabbits. You cannot kill 1 billion rabbits and get your season pass. So it's not going to be that one experience per, but there is a kill 100 rabbits and there's a kill 100 bears. And so if you're willing to go hunt down lions, tigers, and bears, then you probably can get to your 1,000. But you're going to need to shake it up a little. So
they have that. They do have like the bigger, like do this, like catch 10 fish or something like that.
Looks like it.
And then it rewards like 2,000. And it's like, cool. Well, I mean, does it really break the game to say 2010? I don't think so. Like it's that what it ends up doing, there's a slight psychological thing, and it doesn't mean to apply to everybody, but for me, it's like, okay, well, then I did the 10, and then now it fundamentally drives you into content, which isn't wrong in its design, but it starts to take things off the table from like, oh, I just felt like getting on tonight and fishing. Oh man, I got the one thing, it's like, as opposed to like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I decided to catch 100 fish today. That's awesome. Like I made some degree of progress and I also got the big bump. What else is there? And I find that whenever you just like, cause Destiny, this is how I look at it from Destiny's perspective. Killing anything in Destiny is rewarding you along that season pass. It's not efficient. The efficient thing is to do the bounties, the quests, the seasonal challenges. Like that's how you actually really progress, but they're not taking away like the 200 experience that you got from killing that one thing for doing it.
How long are they expecting it to take to complete the pass?
We don't know. That's what I was hoping to do on the PTR. I was trying to find out this weekend, like, how does it feel? I only got to level 2. The reason is there's things I was trying to do, wasn't tracking correctly, and there weren't enough people who wanted to do like expeditions and things like that to try to like, because like, if I could push it up, like if it takes me like as somebody who plays this game a lot, like 15-20 days to do a season pass, like that's great. That means that if you're just playing casually, you should be able to knock it out pretty quickly. But I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to take to do a seasons are 3 months. We already know season 2, 3,
Right.
4.
But how
7.
much do they expect them
Yeah.
to play in that 3 months? And so for an
Right.
active player, they may finish their season pass halfway through the season. And they may feel like, okay, and that opens everything back up on the table. So like Call of Duty, for example, I finished the season pass for season 1 after probably 40 or 50 of my DMZ games and maybe 200 or 300 quick play
Yeah.
games. But total on my career, we're in season 2 right now, I've got like 600 quick play games and over 60, I think it counts it by extractions. So over 60 extractions from DMZ, which is just way more playtime. It's way more playtime. Total account kills, by the way, just as an odd fact, they now have a leaderboard in Call of Duty. So I didn't know over the weekend. I think that got added with season 2.
Nice.
So we were digging through that. My friend of mine that plays as much as I do. And so I could see Brian's name on there and I could see kind of all that. So like, I know leaderboards.
I need to get back in then. I need to jump in and start.
I'm in the top 1% for total players killed. Top 1%
nice,
globally.
Nice. Wow, that's amazing.
I'm a 1%er.
It's unfortunately, we don't get any traction from streaming Call of Duty.
So
you should put that in the title. 1%, like top 1%.
I'm a 1%er. Yeah, people love that. So, so like I think New World's also looking at adding some leaderboards and things like that. And I think that
they did.
Kind of just tells you where you're at.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing I like about it, because like I'm not necessarily worried about global. I like having it check with company and friends, and just like it's just like this. Option. Yeah, it's like just company friends don't care about like how everybody else is doing, but where are we in having our own little private let's go, baby, kind of thing.
I want global percentile. I want to be able to see like the top 100, just because usually like the first place guy is miles ahead of second place.
Oh yeah,
and that's like miles ahead of third. Yeah. And so like it's nice to know like, okay, top 100 is usually substantially more. While it is usually beyond me, I at least understand how they got there. As opposed to the number 1 guy, you're like, I don't even see how that's mathematically possible.
Who are you? Who are you? Yeah.
And then from there, I want to be able to filter down to friends and to like any community groups you're in. Really nice, or server or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I look forward to kind of seeing that. Especially if you go get it on a grind, you're like, I just want to see how much sky metal I can farm in an hour. And so you do 1 hour and that's your base score. And then you end up finding you get a lot of joy out of that and you optimize it over 10 or 12 hours. Well, now I want to go see, who gathered the most star metal this month? Like, how am I doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where, like, I hope that we get to see more improvements on that. Like, because they don't have to offer rewards. They offer some of the leaderboards do have rewards. But like, just like, let us track all this stuff and just have a little fun with it. Like Mike says that he's a big 0 on the leaderboards right now. Always like, he tries to rub it in on my love of controllers. And I tell him he sucks at fishing and everything. It's like, I just see goose eggs all day long, man. Goose eggs all day. Guys, we're going to wrap up today's show, but if you guys haven't been following over on Twitch, Chris is going to be continuing on. What are you working on this week? I know we're doing Destiny tomorrow, but what's your plan for the rest of the day?
So my big goal, I've been kind of working on one project at a time. Final Fantasy is pretty much every other project. Is my big goal right now today was to finish up the last of the Skysteel tools, the Shadowbringers crafting and gathering relics. I already did that this morning. And so I've been slowly kind of chipping away at another like long-term grindy achievement. I've been kind of grinding the resources for that in the background. I'll probably end stream a little earlier than typical today because we're going to go long throughout the week. So as much as possible, I'd like to go long with Destiny this week. So I'll be in Destiny Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Then we'll be back in Final Fantasy next Monday to take on Resplendence.
Ooh. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for the 14 likes here on the live show. Hopefully you, whether you watch this in the archive or as we break them up into different videos throughout the week for you guys, I appreciate y'all. And thanks so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end broadcast and wave it out. And we guys will see you